Florida Governor Ron DeSantis said he would not choose 2024 Democratic presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as a running mate, but could be considered for other positions.
Yes, the medical stuff, I'm very good on that. So that does appeal to me, but there's a whole host of other things that he'd probably be out of step with. And so on that regard, it's like, okay, if you're president, sick him on the FDA if he'd be willing to serve, or sick him on CDC. But in terms of being veep, if there's, 70% of the issues that he may be averse to our base on, that just creates an issue.
Kind of bro talk there. Oh, sick him on the FDA, sick him on the CDC, but maybe not for Veep. He's kind of using this short campaign speak in interviews. And I think Ron DeSantis just has a generally hard time communicating with the public. But what do you make of this strategy of I'm going to appoint someone to my cabinet and promise that to the public to hopefully get some of the votes of people who like RFK Jr.?
Yeah, DeSantis is having a bad week. I guess we haven't really talked about it, but he had to let go of a bunch of his online-focused staffers, including someone that there was some indication, there are rumors, there was reporting from Semaphore that they were involved in there were these two very weird pro-DeSantis videos that were released by DeSantis allies, and it's not clear to what extent the campaign was involved. One was about was going after Trump for being too pro-LGBT,
right? And
then the other used explicit Nazi imagery in promotion of DeSantis. They're real weird ads. I don't know what. Who is coming into the DeSantis fold after seeing this? So some weird stuff. I think similarly, honestly, and I know many of the viewers are big appreciators of RFK Jr. I like a lot of the things he has to say, especially on the free speech category. I appreciate his dissent on COVID. I agree with some of it. I disagree with other points of it. Maybe some people, maybe including some people watching the show, will see this as a good move from DeSantis to be open-minded about trying to include different and dissenting perspectives. I personally, by saying he put him on FDA and CDC, honestly, I think there's a big difference even between those two roles, because RFK Jr. Has this long history of going against pharmaceutical companies, energy companies, for environmental protection. Kind of wants more, more testing on pharmaceutical companies, all those things. I personally, for my ideology, I don't want the FDA to make it harder for drug companies, energy companies, business companies to operate. I want more choice for the consumers. So, one of my problems, obviously, with the CDC is that, it was taking the COVID vaccine decision out of people's hands. That's what the Biden administration did in general. So I think I would have less of an issue with him involved in CDC because they're the advisory people. But the FDA actually has power to again, stop you from being able to decide what you put in your body. So I'd want to hear more from him on specifically what his views are there. But I don't want to make it harder for people to get drugs that they want to take. That's, it should be your choice. It shouldn't be mandated at all. And I appreciate that he's against mandates, but he has a long history of advocating for, more penalties, liabilities, restrictions, regulations, et cetera, which is why he's running as a Democrat, not a Republican.
Right. When DeSantis says, some of the medical stuff I'm good on, we assume that means vaccines, right?
Yeah.
Because RFK Jr. hasn't really spoken out about a lot of other things, has criticized, the way that pharmaceuticals, happen in our country, the way that you have so many people that are so high up on the FDA, having former positions with large pharmaceutical companies, working for, agricultural giants and corporate farming, obvious conflicts of interest there. That needs to be broken up. RFK Jr. has spoken about that quite a bit. I think that's a popular sentiment in the United States, that we're very sick of the fact that, we eat the same food in this country, but someone goes on vacation in Europe, eats the same food, but because there's not preservatives and dangerous chemicals, they feel fine. Whereas if they eat it in the United States, they get bloated, they feel sick. I think a lot of people are not happy with that. So I think Ron DeSantis might gain some points by saying, I like how RFK Jr. approaches this issue.
The FDA is the thing standing in way of us enjoying the things the Europeans enjoy, though, right?
Right.
I mean,
Exactly.
There are kinds of what's the famous example? Sunblock. There's a great kind of sunblock that's available in Europe that's just never been approved by the FDA. It's approved by all the European health officials. It's approved by, again, I think if it's good enough for the British, it's probably good enough. It's not some untested, dangerous thing. But the FDA is so, again, like allergy medicine and like cold medicine actually works in Europe. It doesn't work that well here. It actually works in Europe, but it's never been approved here in the FDA. It's too costly and part of the reason is it's too expensive for drug companies to try to get it past the FDA's testing and approval standards. There's this artificial monopoly that's totally the fault of the U.S. government. So I want to streamline that process. I want to get the FDA out of the way. Now, maybe RFK Jr. is on board with some of those things. We've asked him a little bit about this when he's been on the show. My colleagues at Reason Magazine also interviewed him, and it was a pretty tough interview. And I remember him saying, well, he said he doesn't want to make it easier, I think, for drugs to be approved. I think that was a direct quote. But then he did say he doesn't want to make it harder, and he also thinks people should be able to, who are in a precarious medical situation, the kind of the right to choose movement, where you're saying I'm willing to try some experimental thing because I'll damn whatever the effects are, but I need to I might be in a very precarious medical situation even at the end of my life, and I'm willing to try something. He sounded on board with that, which I think is really good. Anyway, I have a lot of questions still.
Yeah, I think the corruption within the FDA it goes in both directions, right?
Yeah.
So you have these products that are, used in Europe that work quite well. A lot of, natural remedies that we have in the United States that the FDA requires them label, this has not been reviewed or approved by the FDA, when there's a lot of alternative medicine that could be quite useful and is useful in other countries. But you have this problem of, under-regulation and over-regulation in that sense, right? They're saying we're not going to approve these drugs that are used in other places that are fine for you, but you also have a lot of dangerous chemicals and red dye and yellow dye in our foods and all kinds of preservatives that are banned in Europe that increase their quality of food when it comes to things like bread and cheese, produce, and fresh products. We don't have those here that are of the same quality because we have the under-regulation problem, where they're allowing large corporations to mass produce food and produce food with a lot of preservatives so that they have a longer shelf life, they can sell more products and not, have that loss when they have to get rid of those foods. So.
Well, meanwhile, journalist Aaron Mate hit out at Kennedy for his support of Israel, tweeting that RFK Jr. is cavorting with bigots to support an apartheid government, even putting aside basic human decency. Politically, it makes no sense. Israel lobby will never back him. They have both parties already being pro-apartheid is a loser with the Dem base, especially youth. You're more plugged into disputes on the left than I am. Is this some kind of deal breaker, you think, his views on Israel? Brianna grilled him very stridently last time when we interviewed him on that subject.
Yeah, I think it's tough. We don't have a unified left when it comes to the issue of Israel-Palestine. It's
you don't have a unified left when it comes to anything, as far as I can tell from spectating.
there are a few things we've got, Robby.
No offense.
Israel's especially a contentious issue because you have people who call themselves progressives who say, if you support any kind of, Palestinian resistance, you're an anti-Semite. That's a really difficult position to take. I think we can have some nuance with the issue of Israel, but we don't teach a lot about foreign policy in public schools. And so it's not an issue that a lot of people can make an informed decision on, unfortunately. A lot of people don't take the time to research, the history there and what's actually going on. And I think that's the chief problem there. I think if a lot of people really looked into the issue of Israel-Palestine historically, analyzed the issue from both perspectives that are out there, they would probably be quite critical of the Netanyahu regime and quite critical of, the land grabbing on behalf of Israel and Palestine. And so I don't think this is going to be the main issue that takes RFK Jr. down, because we even have very progressive members of Congress like Jamal Bowman who have gone back and forth on either side of this issue and still maintain their support and their seat in Congress.
All right, well, we'll have more Rising right after this.